Um, and so then, yeah, where would you go from there? So for those of you who grow commercial corn and think everybody should get 200 bushels, this is my yeah, this year's corn was terrible, but that was not good ground. This goes back to 2016, kind of in the time frame. Lauren, the experiment we did on your place was 2017, and that's when I did the 60-inch rows that really launched my dent in the universe on that stuff. But this was a plot we had down by LaPorte City in a good field. The field was doing like 250 bushel corn in the center rows here and in this strips. At this point in time, I was still looking at 4-row rows and nothing between. So this was black dirt, scorched, cooked in the sun. That's a capital offense in my way of thinking these days. But at that point in time, I was just worried about corn yield. So we had pretty good strip yield. If you look at the if this had been a 30-inch row, and at this point, I was still quoting this as the amount of corn in the row as if it's a 30-inch row, because I was coming off of a time when this was going to be beans in a mature environment. So these are different rows of beans. And if they're a row of beans, then this row gets credit for all the corn that it grows without having to divide it by the blank space. My grower took me to school on that one. And so I've stopped talking about individual row yield. That was just the way I was measuring it. What's obvious from this graph that I never really focused on enough was the dramatic difference from one variety to the other. So if you go back to the field, half the field, this is a half-mile row, a quarter mile of this variety, Pioneer 1057, and a quarter mile of 1197. And interestingly, the seed corn dealer thought that this one would outproduce this one when we were selecting, because this was the one next to the road. This was way in the back part of the field. We had a turnaround area in the middle, which was a huge waste of space. Half-mile rows are too long for my work. But then if you take that and say, okay, you can't talk about rows, at least talk about strips. And this graphic is interesting because it just shows, and it kind of goes back to the question that Zach had about, well, how about the rows in the center, you know? And granted, this was good corn, 250, 260 bushels on and the variety didn't matter as much in the center as it did on the edges. I think I just now realized that's a legitimate conclusion, and I've had this data in my hot little hands for 6 years now. So the variety didn't matter much here, but it made a hell of a difference on the edge. So, okay, pay attention, Bob. Listen to what nature's trying to tell us. But then if you go back and calculate a strip yield, you get a number like this. So the strips were doing over 300 in a field that was doing 250. So then the art becomes, and again, back to strip intercropping, the art becomes, okay, let's get some beans or something else in there that is happy with a 10-foot opening. And then we're going to have 300 bushel corn and 10 feet of something else that hopefully is worth real money. But if you're not going to do that, then you got to go back and look at what the field yield is. So for this strip yield, by the time you have this extra space, this is what the field yield becomes. And this dot right here was kind of the trigger for the 60-inch rows, in addition to Reno shaming me into it. But at this point, I could take out one row. I could have 4 rows of corn and take out one row, and I got just as much corn. So this really became kind of a tram line. And I was trying to promote tram lines for sprayer wheels to run down with fat tires so you didn't make ruts. But anytime you went beyond that, the field yield went down. And so at that point, I said anything more than 30-inch row opening is wasting the sunlight. Oh, but that's only from a corn perspective. If you have an opening there and you want to get something like grazing material or cover crop or whatever, and you value that, you're not wasting the sunlight. If you're scorching the earth, you're wasting sunlight and you're gonna have weeds. Okay? I'm gonna go on to what I want to do next year, and that's how are we on time? Oh my God, we got an hour into this. Any questions, comments?